I'm sorry I became late. We just got terribly confused. It's not us CDM.
Yeah.
They're Israel, pro-Israel, like there were like 10 of them. You know, they blocked the street. There were like 15 police cars.
wow.
Just to get across was difficult.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, I work with faith-based organizations in South Africa and in India. In India, I work with the internally displaced, people who are mostly victims of religious violence, or so-called religious violence. And in South Africa, we work in 3 schools run by Catholic missionaries for refugees, for refugees who come from other African countries to South Africa. I didn't hear the first part of the presentations, but from what I heard, I have a few comments and questions. One is that when I see the situations in both these countries, India and South Africa, and also other countries where I work, I feel like there is a lot of talk about how we are all one, how various faiths are promoting the same thing, ultimately peace and harmony and love for your neighbor and so on. But there's very little discussion on economic justice, which to me is a big problem, because what I see working in the communities directly, dealing with people who are displaced or are running away from their countries because of religious violence, is that the main reason for that is really economics, not so much religion. Of course, racism is there. There are deep-seated prejudices against minorities, but really, ultimately, it's all about, economic justice. And I think we need to underline that wherever we are working for peace between various communities. The second thing I find a bit problematic is that we often forget people who are irreligious or do not follow a religion, maybe multicultural. In my case, for instance, I was raised in 3 different religious traditions. And my parents did not give me a last name, so I don't fall into any category. And it's very strange, and I face a lot of problems because of that, but because my parents instilled in me that sense of identity which goes across religion, like a religion, it actually empowers me, and that's how I'm trying to raise our daughter, and I feel that that's very important ultimately for world peace, to go beyond that, to sort of not just say, look, my religion teaches good stuff and your religion teaches good stuff and therefore we are one. No, we are all doing the right stuff because it's right, not because my religion teaches it or your religion teaches it. That's beyond, it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't appeal, because, for instance, the Quran is an open book. Now, what I would interpret from it would be a totally different interpretation from what an ISIS person may interpret. So, I'm not going to be able to convince that person, unfortunately, So I think you have to go beyond this, my religion teaches this and your religion teaches that, in my understanding. And last of all, I think just from whatever little I have read, we do a lot of, reconstructing of history, of facts. So we say, look, for instance, people in the United States Army who are going to go fight the various, enemies come from various religions. And therefore, we must say that we are an army that is built of, everyone. It's not just Christians. Look, after all, that Muslim family who is now fighting Trump, they are not Christians, But that's reconstructing history. What my I think endeavor everywhere I work is to deconstruct it, and say, look, what is actually wrong? What are the loopholes? What are the things that are actually making us more racist, or more fanatical, or more fundamentalist? That's very important. I think we are always going for what's good, what's positive, and trying to sort of reconstruct it and present it as a case that, look, all is hunky-dory. But it's not. For instance, casteism in India is actually a problem. People get killed because of caste. You know, and people do get killed because of their skin color or because of being a minority religion. And I think that, to me, I mean, to question what is problematic very openly, even within your own religious traditions, it's important. There's no reason why we should say, look, everyone's so nice, you know, everything's so good, because it's not. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to push back a little bit when you said that America was a Christian army that was going with it. The fact, General Smedley said in the 40s that we actually are racketeers of Wall Street.
Yes.
Okay, we are racketeers of Wall Street. In 1961, Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial state. That was in 61. That's what has happened. We are owned by the corporations, and these are not American corporations anymore. These are multinational corporations that have no boundaries. They're worldwide, and they're just looking for profit, and that's what we've become. We are racketeers. That's what the Army has become in the United States. We are the empire, you know, and we follow. You know, when we talk about it, I love studying religions. You know, in Catholicism, right, you have the social political entity that was the Holy Roman Empire, and underneath that you have the people that truly followed the religion. And what you find was that they were heretics in their time, right? They were crucified, and then 2 centuries later we canonize them. Right? So that's what we do, you know, and that's what the church does. And the church is now kind of finding its way with Pope Francis. You know, we're starting to find our way a little bit, even though there's still a lot of problems. And it comes down to, you know, and what I look at is the basis of all true faith to me is that simple love thing, right? I mean, you know, John Lennon said that, or was that a long time ago, right? I'm an old hippie, so you gotta excuse me. You know, but you know, it is about that. And you know, we talked about you know, the golden, you know, Jesus came up and said, okay, if you follow these 2 rules, you don't have to worry about all the other rules, right? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And also love your neighbor as yourself. The problem that we don't sometimes think about is the loving himself part. We miss that part. We have to love ourselves, and we don't. You know, so what happens is we project on the others what we don't like in ourselves, right? It's a Jungian concept. So we see in others what we don't like that we are repressing. Right? So that's why it starts off as individual. Someone said that each Christian has his own belief. You know, like if you have 1,000 Christians, you have 1,000 different Christianities. You know, because everyone does the faith in some way. I believe that's probably true of Muslims, Jews, and certainly of pagans. Yeah. You know, and you know, and again, paganism for me is the love of the earth. You know, and that's where we got cut off. Right? A lot of the traditions, living traditions said, don't worry about this. The flesh is bad. We made it evil, right? And then because of that, and you know, and your reward's going to be after. You know, so you know, this is, you know, don't follow the way of flesh. And that to me is the perversion that happened. The perversion that happened, and that's why we're in the problems that we're having right now. So we have to get back to loving the earth. Loving our bodies, loving ourselves, right? And that, for me, that's, and I don't want to prophesize here. And I will do that. I will get on my soapbox. So.
Great. We're coming back here. And then.
So, I actually had a question, not a question, but just a comment similar to, what's your name, sorry, Shireen? Similar to what Shireen said, but you had said something about how, at the basis of it, we're not dealing with economic inequality, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I do think there is the issue of racism, and it's a huge part of the colonization of faith that's happened. Especially my entire being, my entire existence. I have a very Christian I have a French Christian last name that's Baptiste. I have a Muslim first name because my parents just liked that name. But my country is a country that's now entirely made up of the colonial system, is born entirely out of the colonial system. We have completely erased the Amerindian culture. The few references I heard growing up, and we are actually a country that prides on multiculturalism and our multi-faith culture, but we do that repression that you were talking about. We're always talking about, oh, we are all one, but we have these really structural problems, and a lot of that structural problem is direct racism between the two dominant groups in particular, but amongst everybody. So we have a large population of Indian, Indo-Trinidadians and Afro-Trinidadians, plus mixes, Asian Trinidadians, white Trinidadians. Also, but the two dominant groups are Indo and African, and they're fighting, and they're using religion as one of the battlegrounds.
Wow.
Politics is another one of the battlegrounds. The politics are now aligned with the religion, etc. There's all of this going on, and this is one way that it plays out in a racist way. Then there's the Islamophobia, which is highly predicated on racism. So I would say that racism is at the core of the tough conversations that need to be had, and I have not found. I recently, I wouldn't say I've converted or anything. I grew up in the Catholic faith. I went to Catholic school. I've had great examples of Catholic social justice, just within my family. But I also grew up seeing the injustices and learning from the injustices. To me, Pope Francis doesn't go far enough. But I also don't blame him. This is what he's inherited. I don't know, it's just so complicated. But for my child, we recently started to go to a different church. We started going to a United Church, mainly because they started to have that language that I was looking for about anti-oppression, about acknowledging the role they played in colonizing and oppressing in different aspects. And for those, because I know a lot of you are American, the United Church, I think, is just in Canada. It's a union of something that
It's not UCC? That's what I
Yeah.
was wondering. It's, because I saw United Church, and is it,
Yes.
is it the same as UCC or not?
The United Church of Canada, and basically.
Okay, as opposed to the United Church of Christ, which is in
Yeah.
America. Okay.
Yeah. So there's Presbyterian, Methodist, and Anglican churches that all kind of amalgamated in the 1920s, but there are still obviously the Anglican Church of Canada, the Presbyterian Church of Canada. But that's where they came out from, and they've adopted a lot of social justice ideals. I don't know enough to really comment or criticize or praise or anything, and I'm still new to the whole process. But the reason why we did that is just because I was looking for that engagement within the church structure with their past, and it's interesting the way you guys do it. I'm curious to know if you have a framework as a collective for dealing with actively tackling and dismantling racist structures. And also a framework, you kind of talked about like bursting out of the bubble, but is there actually any like resources or research or frameworks that you've developed to share with others on how this can be accomplished in other contexts outside of your own community? Two big questions.